Welcome back to the She Thrives Influential Women podcast. I am your host, Lori Murphy, and I am an empowerment coach for women. And thank you so much for joining us again today. This podcast is designed for women to help inspire, to help them, be positively influenced by myself and other women who have such powerful stories that will show you that you can, move through your journey, move through your struggles, and you can also be empowered. A little bit of a background about me, if you're new to this podcast, is that I just recently celebrated 13 years in sobriety, and my journey in recovery from alcoholism had led me down an amazing path of self-discovery, healing, and just overall growth. And eventually I heard my calling to coach women, to help them through their journeys. Now I'm a public speaker, a published author, a coach, and the host of this wonderful podcast. So if you are new, hit that subscribe button, never miss another episode. And I cannot wait to continue to go through this journey with you. And today I have an amazing guest. Her daughter, Melissa, just was featured on the podcast last week. Her daughter-in-law, Heather, is going to be, her episode is getting launched today. And now I have Joanne Destefano. She is an amazing woman with a powerful story. Today is her birthday, so this is an awesome way to be celebrating. And Joanne has been a well-known watercolor artist and instructor for more than 40 years. She has exhibited in many one women and group shows and has been an instructor at Mohawk Valley Community College, SUNY IT, Marcy, New York, Rome Art and Community Center, senior centers, and in her home studio in Utica, New York. But the best award she feels she has earned is to help others achieve success in watercolors because it is the master painter of creation and has done to change her life. She has earned numerous awards in the span of her painting career, to include two Best of Show at Museum Williams Sidewalk Show, and accepted in many juried and non-juried fine art shows throughout the state of New York. In her, mixed medium watercolors, Joanne uses various, gels, papers, tears up, completed unsuccessful paintings. And she just does a lot of, pieces back together in different designs. And, she's amazing. I can't wait. Her bio is so impressive. Joanne is, she is a published author herself. She has published an autobiography in poetry form and in so many other forms. I See Myself in Your Eyes is one of her books, and that is self-published, and many, many other opportunities, which I can't wait for her to share more about that here. Joanne, it is so great to, have you on the show. I have so many things I could continue on about your bio because it's such an inspirational thing. I want you to be able to share more about that yourself. Welcome to the show, Joanne. How are you today?
I'm fine, Lori. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being able to be with you.
Oh, I'm glad to have you, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
What a great way to celebrate.
It is. It is. It just happened to fall on my birthday. Thank you.
Do you have any special plans for your birthday?
Well, I sort of space it out. I like spacing it out and during the whole coming week. So today I'm on a decorating committee for church, so we're doing that, and then I have a mutual friend birthday, and we're going to lunch after that. And so I have different things scheduled. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
yesterday was Thanksgiving. So,
after Thanksgiving,
a lot of family.
yeah, it's a great day. It's a great time to have my birthday because it's a time to be grateful and to be together with family, and that is very crucial to me.
Yes.
Crucial. It's my word.
Oh, family is a wonderful gift. And to be able to have
Yeah.
time with, the people you love, especially, for a birthday, holiday, it's it's a gift and a blessing in its own.
Yeah, yeah,
So tell
it
us a
is.
little bit about so you're from the Utica area. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am third generation Italians in Utica, New York. My family had the first Italian bakery on Bleecker Street. And we were growing up with a wonderful, strong legacy of a grandfather who came here at 16 and became an entrepreneur, establishing businesses. And it's amazing how he was able to incorporate all that with just being here and not knowing the language and
Hmm.
having 13 children. We grew up in a very wonderful family setting. And, and it was from the very beginning. A lot of joy, a lot of sorrow, but it gave us the fortitude and it gave us the ability to keep rising above. And yeah, he was amazing. So that was beginnings. And I'm just born and raised here in the Utica area. I love this area. I don't like when anyone says anything against it. So yeah,
Well, my husband and I spent a lot of time out in that area, and it really is a great area. You
yes.
and you also at one point lived up on Cayuga Lake, where my husband and I actually, his family has a camp.
Yes, we were there 17 years, and it was a Shangri-La of a time. My husband used to tell me I live in a little cocoon up there, just a half hour away from Utica,
Hmm.
and it was a great time. It was uh, bittersweet in having moved there
Hmm.
because of the circumstances that led up to it,
Hmm.
but it ended up being a wonderful place, and I loved it there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so you were born and raised there, so you met your husband in that area too, I'm assuming.
I did. The father of my children, I met here in Utica, and then after that, we unfortunately had a divorce situation, and then I met my husband, who I've been married to for 30 years, who passed away 3 years tomorrow, in fact.
I'm so sorry to
So,
hear that.
yes,
Oh, wow. But you had a wonderful life together. 30 years is amazing.
I did, and I also, learned and had a wonderful life. You know, with my first husband. I have
Mhm.
4 beautiful children as a result. We did the best we could with what we had, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the one of your children is actually the owner of Utica Coffee. And
Yes,
then you have Melissa, who was just recently on the podcast with an incredibly powerful story. She's
yeah,
also, entrepreneur, owns a business, flipping houses and decorating. And you have two other children
I
who
do.
I did not have the honor to meet.
No, you did not. I
And
have
are
Ed. I have Ed, who is his free spirited mother, and he is far different than I could say his brother was or his siblings. But he is. They're all so special in their own way. And
Mhm.
then I have Melissa, Kristen, and she is in North Carolina. She has left us, and we miss her terribly. But at least we're in touch with her, and we see each other all the time. We try to as
Yeah.
much as we can. Yeah.
Oh, it's a wonderful family by the sounds of it. And
Oh,
just by the ones that I've met, it's a great family.
yeah, we
You know.
stay connected, and we love our times together. And we have
Yeah.
such a good time when we are together. We laugh, and we have wonderful. We've been very blessed to have traveled together,
Hmm.
and we hopefully we can do some more of that.
Yeah. Now, one of the things, so in your bio, you mentioned you're an author, you're an artist, you also do public speaking as well.
Hmm.
I would love to hear about your journey because you're self-taught as an artist, and that was
Hmm.
really a big part of, there's a big part in that, right? Like a big
Hmm.
story behind all that. And I'd love to hear,
Hmm.
more about that.
Without having received any formal training, Lori, I learned and I became an art therapist, so to speak, through experience and through difficult times.
Mhm.
And it was those times that I turned around and tried to turn around into a positive to be able to tell others that through adversity, good can come if we could just hang on. If there's one positive thing, hang on to it for dear life.
Mm.
And so those difficult times that precipitated my art career, I try to use for the positive, which I have to this day. So there's a long story. I have many stories to tell. There's a long story behind that.
Well, if you want to share a little bit more about that, we have some time. I'd love to hear a
Okay.
little bit about it. If you know, what led you
Okay.
to the love and joy of art?
I think my story has to begin on the day of my birth.
Mm.
And that's why it was ironic that it should be this day for the podcast. But on the day of my birth, my mother gave her life for me. My mother knew that another child would mean her death, and she literally gave her life for me. Told my dad it would be okay to have another child, and she died at the day of my birth. And that became a catalyst for my quest, first of all, to know her, to know someone who was so close to me and was a part of me, and yet one I've never known. And it manifested itself in the form of anxiety later on in life, so that I attempted to do something about it and attempted to go to an art class and learn. I had no idea, I had no formal training with it. So I attempted to start classes, and the fears were overwhelming. I became agoraphobic, afraid to leave the house, but instead of succumbing to that, I left anyway, and I started to an art class. Many times having to run out, fear because of fears and feeling I was choking, and so I hung on to that, and I went to the doctor, and he looked at all the reasons for it, and was given tranquilizers upon tranquilizers, and it was certainly not helping. I felt totally zoned by taking these. So as I started going to the art class, I realized that it was uh, enabling me to be free and to express my emotions through color. So little by little, the fears started to diminish, and I have to say that God became my great physician. And as I was now painting, and I would be enveloped into maybe a lighthouse, for instance, I would be so mesmerized. I feel I was right there and I wasn't thinking about anything around me. And
Mm.
I felt it was a force of healing. And little by little that happened, but it was a process. It was a process. I had to go through much pain. As I was raising my children, I had regrets because I was not uh, free of fear and anxiety. So
Yeah.
as I started talking about it and realizing that I needed to tell my story through art, not verbalizing it at that point, but
Mhm.
telling my story through art and expressing my emotion.
Wow.
I can go on. So,
Oh, well, you're more than welcome to, because it's a fascinating story about, I actually was just recently had somebody on the podcast and we talked about this very a similar topic about how art is healing, right? And how we can tell our stories through that artistic um you know, that artistic gift. And it can be through music, it can be through painting, but in many other forms. Yours just so happens to be through watercolor art. And I've seen some of
mhm,
your work and it is absolutely stunning.
thank you.
And So it basically had led you down this path of healing. And like you said, God became your physician. So
Mhm,
eventually, if I remember correctly, when we had spoken, there was a point in time where you were able to get off of those medications.
mhm. I did. I went off of them myself, and little by little, and I realized that I was feeling better. But I had to talk to myself. I had to listen to what I was saying.
Mhm.
I was stopping to naming defeat. And the more you say, I can't do this, you won't be able to. And I was listening to what I was saying. And that was part of prayer, is to listen to what I was telling others. Instead of saying, I'm depressed, I can't do this, I thought, no, wait a minute, I can do all things through Christ. And that became my first scripture that I learned. And I made a stamp of it and I put it on the back of all my paintings. And so as I began to confess positiveness, it did not negate the pain,
Mhm.
but it started to give me confidence to know that that pain could diminish. The pain doesn't go away, but you can rise above that. And if you could help one other person because of it, then that's why you've gone through it. And at the time, it doesn't seem like nothing could come good from that. And because supposedly, things work out together for good.
Yeah.
And I could not see anything positive from that. But now, all these years later, because that was, I'm talking about right after I had my son, and he was 3 years old, and now he's 59. Uh, but so that was many years ago. And now to this day, I'm finding that it still has become my ministry, that there are many others will come to me that are in the throes of anxiety and fears because they know that I can say, yes, I've done that. I know I know where you're coming from. I know what you feel. So it's become a ministry as I teach. I use many analogies in my teaching, the values in our lives as in a painting, the composition of our lives as in a painting, and the darks and lights that are so crucial and so needful in a painting are also in our lives. But not that we could wallow in it, Lori, but that we could rise above it and be used to help others. It doesn't mean it'll go away, but it takes time and it does dissipate.
Mhm.
But if you could help one person, and I can't help but tell the story when I was teaching, and we paint to music, and my classes have been called Freedom of Watercolors. Where many times we don't use brushes. We pour paint on. I use credit cards to scrape off straws, all kinds of, but you can't use brushes. So this particular class was one such as that. And this girl came in and she said, I have post traumatic stress syndrome. I had not heard of that. Obviously, I went through it, but I did not hear its acronyms. And I said, well, help me today because I needed to do. She said, I've been suicidal all day. And as we painted and poured, and I saw her with this big piece of paper and she was tipping it and she formed a bridge. And she was just mesmerized in that, not thinking of herself. And at the end of the class, she said, you have no idea how this class changed my life. And that's why I paint. It's not the accolades, it's not the blue ribbons, it's not the shows. That's why I paint, to have been able to minister to this one person as a result of it.
Yeah. It's amazing. I,
And that's it's one of many
yeah.
situations. I was just, yeah.
Yeah, can say that art was a huge part of my healing journey. I utilized painting a lot, right? Like I painted a
Mhm.
lot, especially when I was in the my process of going through healing from PTSD. And I still to this day cannot explain 100% the science behind it. All I know is that it really helped release those emotions, release those fears, and it came out in colorful forms of, beautiful landscapes. Because nature is where I've gotten most of my healing, and that's where I've connected most with God, and that is where I've, really truly have found peace was on hikes and spending time out in nature. So of course I gravitated to painting landscapes, and it really helped free my soul from those experiences that I had that I was suppressing down inside,
Mhm.
um, and gave me the ability to be able to have freedom from it,
Mhm.
you know?
Lori, I think that all that you have said has incorporated choice. We make a choice. We can wallow. Everyone has something they could wallow in for the rest of their life. It's
Mhm.
poor me. Everyone has something. Everyone has a story to tell. In fact, my latest painting that I just completed is 4 women just sitting, and the name of it is "Everyone Has a Stories to Tell." So to this day, I'm still believing that. So we all have something that we could affect others with,
Yeah.
whether it be negative or positive. And many times when you're going through that, you are affecting others in a negative way, and people
Sure.
really don't want to be with you. We have to admit it.
Mhm. Oh,
So you can choose to turn that around. When I saw that it was destroying or affecting my marriage, and when I saw that it was affecting my children, I could say that's my biggest regret, is that having a firstborn and going through the throes of anxieties and fears was very difficult.
yeah.
And I feel to this day I'm very regretful of that. And there's nothing I can do about it except be grateful for this day and do what I can this day and not
Mhm.
look back. We all have regrets that we could look back and we could wallow and we can just get in a hole and we can seclude ourselves,
Mhm.
and and guess what? We will be ineffective to help others. And so we have to choose, do I get myself out of the way, and do I not negate my pain, but do I use my pain to help others? The pain is still
Mhm.
there. So if you use it in a positive way, and it reminds me of the eagle. When there's a storm, the eagle flies towards the storm. He uses the storm to get through. And I did a writing on that, on eagle, and what an analogy it is to our lives.
Yeah.
You have to stop me at some points, Laura, because I can go
No,
on.
no,
I have
you can go
many
on.
stories to tell in many areas. I haven't even touched upon half of them.
Well, I would love to hear more about that because I know, like you said, you have a lot of stories and you haven't touched on a lot of them. And really, this is your time. This is for you, for you to be able to share. The floor is yours. So I'm not, I forgive me for not stopping you, but I'm just listening to you in awe, and I'm just fascinated by, your journey.
Mhm.
Um, you've written books, and I know you had mentioned to me at one point they were on Amazon.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about your books and what got you to writing.
Mhm. I started writing when my daughter, Kristen, who is now, sorry, Chris, 48, she was 5 months old and she had spinal meningitis. And I somehow started writing about how I felt. It was a horrible time. And I wrote a little story about her room and what it looked like and all her little stuffed animals. And I wrote a story about this swan that she loved. And the swan was in the closet on the floor. And he was saddened because she was ill. It was a horrible time. She didn't recognize me one morning, and she had fevers so high. But anyway, like I say, I have different stories. I can go on about that. And she uh, recuperated, and she's amazing. So I started writing about it, and that was the beginning. And I had these writings here and there and everywhere. And after that, it seemed to be the beginning to say that, I felt good putting this down. I felt good writing about it. Because when you put it down and you write about it, it's reality. When
Mm-hmm.
you keep it in and you suppress it, it's safe there, but
Mm-hmm.
it does no good.
Right.
So I chose to have it work out for good.
Yeah.
And I started writing, and I had all these, like I say, notebooks, and I started journaling. And boy, that was the beginning, is journaling, writing it down, writing it down. And so that was the beginning of my book. And when I got them all together and put them in the right format myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it was through a publishing company, but a lot of it was self-published. And
Mm-hmm.
I included my paintings and my journal and my pen and inks and all that. And then I looked at everything, and I thought, what title shall I call this? And I have one picture. I don't have much of my mom, which is another story, but I don't have much of hers. But I looked at her photograph and I said, I see myself in her eyes. And I thought, that's it. That's the name of my book. So I
Yeah.
dedicated it to her, and I dedicated it to all strong women. So the epilogue is dedicated to strong women. We're a strong breed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was the beginning. And it just went from there. And I realized that as I journaled, I felt better. And at the death of my grandson, I put his name in pencil. I could not put it in ink, because then it became reality. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until a few years ago that I erased the pencil and I put in ink. So the journaling has helped me immensely, and meditating and journaling has been proven to bring health to body, mind, and soul. And I have encountered that, as I have chosen. And I'm not saying that I am unique. We are all able to do that
Mm-hmm.
if we so choose.
Absolutely.
So,
That's one thing I can say is that I made that choice myself, and it has turned into one of the greatest rewards. I had to choose to stop playing the victim role, that I was handed a bad card in life and I was being punished, or everything was happening to me. But when I was able to stop and say, to choose to get sober and to change my life, I finally learned that I was asking the wrong question. The question that I was asking myself was, why is this happening to me? But the question I learned to start asking is, why is this happening for me?
mhm, mhm,
Because in my experience, everything along my path and journey happened so that I could be where I am today, to be able to
mhm,
help others. Because like you said, if you're still carrying that, suppressed pain and
mhm,
fear and trauma deep down inside, and you haven't learned how to heal from it and release it, you cannot help another person
mhm, mhm,
because you're too stuck in self.
mhm,
And that, at least that's been what I've experienced in life. So, and I loved how you said the first scripture that you learned was, I can do all things in Christ who strengthens
mhm,
me, because that was the first scripture that I learned.
mm. And it happens to be my granddaughter-in-law's favorite scripture. But that
Mm.
sort of encompasses a lot. And I can do all things through Christ. And it's not negating the fact that, yes, he also gives us the will to do it. You're not saying, okay, Lord, you do it. No, there's action on our part too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, we can't just sit there and wait for things to happen. right? Like, well, I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Well, then that gives me an out to, you know what I mean? Like, I remember when I was first getting sober, I had to learn that. Like, oh, I actually had to put in effort and work here because I actually thought that, well, now that I'm sober, things are just going to happen.
No. Mm-mm.
And I learned that because so I worked two jobs and then I had to study to get my dental assisting national board certification. And I decided to go back to school part-time at night. So I overloaded myself right
Mm-hmm.
when I was in the very beginning of my sobriety. So I can tell you that did not fare well for me. I didn't drink, but I definitely didn't do very well. We'll just leave it at that for now. But I can remember I had this thought that, well, now I'm sober. Now my brain is clear and my mind is, not, poisoned and, in a fog. I don't have to study for this chemistry test because I'm just going to pass it because I'm sober now. So I didn't really study and I failed the test.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I cried and I can't believe
Mm-hmm.
I'm such a failure. And I literally learned a very valuable lesson in that because
Mm-hmm.
that's where how I had to see things in life in general, that it's not going to come like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I actually had to take action steps to be able to keep moving forward, to be able to release that pain, to work through that trauma. And it wasn't something that happened overnight. It was a very long process. And still to this day, I'm still, you know, things that come up that I realize that I need to release and let go of and heal from, you know.
Everything is a process, Lori, and then life gets at you, and there's a lot of things that happen in between. I
Mhm.
wrote a note or a little letter to Melissa on her birthday about the in-betweens. Let's not forget about the in-betweens. Let's savor those times for the in-betweens. And that's when a lot of things I look back on my life. Did I savor the in-between as my children were growing up? Um, did I savor the in-betweens? But but whether I did or not, now I can do something about it. Now I can learn from that.
Yeah.
Learn from it. Don't just oh, poor me, I haven't do this. And another thing is we have to admit our frailties. It's
Mhm.
okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel. It's okay to express because that essentially brings healing.
Sure.
It brings healing in your inners. And when I teach my classes, I'm so grateful for that. I tell you how I started teaching. It was amazing. I was going through a difficult financial time in the throes of divorce, and I had little or not too much money coming in. And I went to the colleges. I went to MB, and I said, I don't have a formal education.
Mhm.
I all I have is art, and I gave them my whole um, art bio and background, and they hired me in continuing ed. And so I taught for continuing ed for 8 years at MV. And I went to the schools. I said, I have no formal education. And so I substituted in the schools. I substituted in Adirondack schools, Utica schools once, Remsen schools for 8 to 10 years.
Mm.
And I substituted art, and they'd call me for everything. They'd call me for math. I said, okay, put your math books away. Today we're going to paint. And they'd call me for shop, and I would just paint, and they kept calling me, and so it was a wonderful chapter.
Yeah.
And as I say, I had no formal, I didn't go to school to do this, but essentially, I learned through experience, and it was wonderful. For the time, it was a good chapter. Then
Yeah.
we moved up to Cayuga Lake, and I had a wonderful studio up there on the lake, and it was after my grandson passed that we moved up there. So it was a place of healing.
Oh,
It was a
yeah.
place I was far removed from friends. It was a place of healing, as you could well relate to having a
There's
camp.
magic that happens there.
There is. Just overlooking the water, and that's where I really, uh, um, increased my writings. After he passed, I just kept, more and more journals. I have so many of them.
Yeah.
And my project is to extrapolate from them some things, and there's some prose and poetry in there I need to take out, and things in there I probably should not have written down. But if anybody reads it after I'm gone, it's too bad. There's nothing they're going to be able to do about it. Say, well, that was Mom.
Well, sometimes I think that those types of things are appreciated more in those moments, because then you can understand where you were at a little bit more about who you are as a person. And I know I'm sure you're by the sounds of it, the bond that you have with your family is they know you, they know your story, they know that what you've had to overcome and what you've continued to, overcome. And what's amazing to me is that it sounds like, in the depths of your darkest moments, you were presented and introduced to this gift that you didn't even know you had,
Mm-hmm.
which in turn was given to you to be able to utilize to not only heal and, become healthy yourself, but now you get to take this talent and this gift, bring it to other people and
Mm-hmm.
show them that there is a way for them to heal through creativity and, through, you know, th- through self-expression. Because
And
art
that
is
has to be
really
our
a
purpose.
what's that?
I'm sorry. Yeah. And that has to be our purpose, is to rise above that. It doesn't negate the hurt. But like I said before, use that hurt, rise above it if it could
Mm-hmm.
help one person. And
Yes.
that is why we're here. Nothing can take away who you are. And I say that all the time. Don't allow anything or anyone to take away who you are, to change who you are. Do
Oh,
not
yeah.
allow it. And boy, that's a process in order for that to happen.
Yeah,
It's a process. It's a conscious effort to have that happen.
absolutely. I
But
think, I
I
think,
want this, yeah, and I want this time of my life to be quality, to have time with my children and my grandchildren. I want it to be quality.
mhm,
I That is a legacy of strength that I want to leave them.
absolutely. Absolutely. I could not, you know, I don't have children, but for me, when I look back at what I want to leave behind that, when God calls me home is I don't want to leave behind this legacy of negativity, of being a person who drank themselves you know, to complete destruction, who wasn't healthy, that didn't bring something good
Mhm.
into this world. And I am grateful that today I get to, even if it's just a small little tiny piece, if I'm putting just a small tiny piece of goodness, and that's what I
Mhm.
leave behind, is that gift of something good, then I've done my part.
And many times it means that we have to put self aside. We put
Hmm.
self aside because self wants to tell us, no, don't do it. Self
Hmm.
wants to tell us, no, hide that. It's not necessary to talk about that. And we have to also be careful who we do say things to, because many things um, should be kept more in confidence than you can't blab all your feelings to everybody. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying when the situation arises and someone is saying, I'm so afraid of that, that is a red flag to me. Wait a minute. God's not giving us a spirit of fear, but of love and of power and a sound mind. And as I say that, it encourages me at the same time. So, it's the whole thing is a journey.
Hmm.
I want to bring joy, because the joy of the Lord is my strength.
Hmm.
And I feel zapped of that strength when I don't have that joy, when
Sure.
I choose sometimes not to have it. And it's okay. But the joy of the Lord is my strength. I want to I want to be with my children and dance. I want to laugh together,
Mhm.
and I want to enjoy who we are because life is short. And while we have the time to be together, I always say yesterday is gone, tomorrow may never come, but we have this moment today. Make the most of that moment.
That
Choose,
that's beautiful
choose
advice.
to make the most of that moment. Don't be so, and watch what we say. Watch what we say to others. Watch what we say to others,
Mhm.
and watch what we say to ourselves. Boy, I need, help with that many times too, because I spew at the mouth a lot of times. But watch that we don't speak defeat to others or condemnation.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember when I did go to one of my first classes at the Y, where I used to have to run out. I had this teacher, and she said one thing to me, and she said, "I see you to be a great artist someday." And that was the most far-fetched thing that could ever be at that point.
Yeah.
And I remembered that positive comment all those years. She has no idea what that one positive comment meant to me. And that gave me a determination, I am going to turn this thing around. And even if I splash on color and it doesn't look like it's going to be anything, I'm going to make it something. I'm going to choose to make it something. If I'm going to use squirt bottles and squirt that paint around and it looks like a mess, I'm going to choose to make it something. And this is how I teach. They come in and they have this such trepidation when they're first coming in. I'm teaching now a class at BOCES, and there's 12 people, and they all came in and they were like scared. So I get them in a circle and I talk to them first, and I tell them my story. Wait a minute. You can turn that big negative into a positive if you so choose. If you're turning out an ugly painting, cut it into bookmarks and laminate it and send it to somebody. And sure enough, there was a student there, and I sent her a bookmark 25, maybe 35 years ago. And she said, I still have that bookmark you gave me. And I saw it, and it was just a piece cut off from a painting with a little pen and ink in it. And so that was a perfect example of use everything for his glory. And come, get out of yourself to help that one person who's hurting.
Yeah. Joanne, I love you. I'm like,
I
I
love
want to
you
be
too.
like Joanne when I grow up.
Yeah, people talk about that or dress as crazy as I do, but I love you too. I can't believe because that day we met at Utica Coffee, I was not going to go that day. And Melissa and I just decided to sit outside. And of course, I'm a continual talk show host, and without having it be on televised, my everyday life is my talk show. And we just got to talking to you. And I prayed that there would be a time that first of all, that Melissa would tell her story, and he's given us more than that. It's been my
Yes.
daughter-in-law and now this, and I totally, I'm excited when that happened because
Oh
those are
yeah.
divine appointments. I pray for a divine appointment every day. It's nothing that could be conjured up, and it was wonderful.
Absolutely. I mean, and Chris and I were just talking about this the other day after I got off the phone with you because I was just like kind of going back to that day where he's like, I just wanted, he's like, because we drink Utica coffee. I mean, we literally have like at least 4 or 5 different flavors in our cabinet right now
Yeah,
because that's what we drink. We got introduced to it when we were up at camp at Cayuta Lake. I think we saw a bag of it at Cliffs or something and we
yeah,
bought it and it was just like, and it's become a very like it's almost like a staple in our household where it's like we have to have some Utica coffee in the house. So Chris was like, they're having a breast cancer thing. Let's go check it out. We can go see
yeah,
the brewing factory and all of that. We really didn't intend like when we met Heather, we didn't realize that she was the co-owner, like that she was
mhm,
married to your son and the whole thing. And we were like, oh wow, we got talking and I told her about my podcast and invited her, told her I'd love to have her come on. And then it was just kind of like, we went to go take a photograph and we put our things at the table that you and Melissa were sitting at because you were so
Yeah,
graciously inviting and, said we could. And it just led us to sitting down and we must have sat with you for another hour just talking.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we left and we were just like so excited. Like, my husband absolutely wants to get more connected with you guys too, because he just thinks you
yeah,
guys are wonderful people. You all have such powerful and inspirational stories. And I know that you have a lot more, which I'd love to bring you back on, so that you can share more of your stories, you know, just because, you have a lot of amazing insight, so much to offer you and your family. And I'd love to be able to bring you back on, and have another hour of just conversation and hearing more about, your life and the things that you've experienced and all of that.
yeah. There's many. There's a big, huge story behind Utica Coffee. There's a huge story behind Kristen and her life. It's just been amazing. And to this day, I'm still teaching this journaling with watercolor, and I have absolutely loved that aspect. I teach it right here in the sanctuary of my yard and from my she shed studio. And I just wanted, like I said, I could just go on, so you could stop me when you can. But, and it was what we do is, I had two students come in, which was enough because I wanted to personalize it.
Hmm.
And we talk about it, and we talk about the things that we're going to write about. And then I teach them a little bit of basics of watercolor so that they express their emotion through color. And then they're writing. And this one girl came to me and she said, I've never shared this. I've never talked about it. And she says, I've written it down. She said, you have no idea how this affected me. And it's something that carried her through her whole life until this
Hmm.
very day, something she had overheard when she was a child and how it
Yeah,
affected her. And she finally wrote it down and talked about it.
it's
So
amazing.
I'm excited that although all my recovery from agoraphobic and all that happened, and which is another thing, after that you determine never to let fears cripple you again.
Sure.
You get determination that fear will never cripple you again. And so I am excited on this, the day of my birth, and turned it around to see that I'm very grateful that my mother saved my life, and that I have a savior who saved my life. And therein lies
Absolutely.
my joy, and there lies my hope.
Joanne, if anybody wants to get in touch with you to hear, more about your story or talk to you about artwork or anything to that nature, how can they find you?
Yes, I do have a website. It's just Joanne Destefano. I think that it connects to some of my artwork. And I have an email, joanne.destefano@aol.com. And I do have my telephone number. I would just be very grateful for anyone that would like to talk more about it, or if there's someone going through any of this that I could possibly help in some way, as they so choose to be helped.
Absolutely. And I will put that information in the description. And it has been a pleasure to have you. And again, I would love to bring you back on to share more of your story. Unfortunately, we're out of time for today.
Yeah,
But, and if there's any way that I can be a guide in anybody's journey, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. My contact information will also be in the description. You can find me on Facebook under Lori A. Murphy at Empowerment Coach for Women. I also have an email, M as in Michael C, empowerment@gmail.com. But stay tuned because there is a website in the works that is also going to be able to get you all that information. So I can't wait to share that with you folks in the future. But Joanne, thank you again for taking the time to be here today. And until next time, let go of fear and let your spirit shine.
thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.